I dropped onto the thin mattress in my small rented room, feeling it sag beneath me as if it shared my exhaustion. The dim yellow bulb above flickered once, then settled into a weak glow that barely filled the space. At 38, my body felt decades older, worn down by 18-hour workdays under the unforgiving Annapolis sun. Dust clung to my skin in patches, mixing with the dried sweat that made my shirt feel stiff. My hands ached with a deep, steady pulse, the kind that never truly faded anymore. As I closed my eyes, the ticking of the small clock on my bedside table interrupted the quiet. That clock, with its chipped wooden frame and faded numbers, was a gift from my mother on my 28th birthday. Her voice echoed in my memory with perfect clarity. "Time is a river, Elias. Do not let it carry you away before you truly live." Back then, I laughed and brushed it off. Now, every tick sounded like a reminder of how far I had drifted from who I once was. 3 hours away, in the quiet coastal town of Easton, my mother lay in a hospital bed, unable to move or speak. 5 years earlier, she had suffered a sudden stroke that changed everything. Before that day, she had been full of life. She was a seamstress who could mend anything from torn coats to wedding gowns. Her fingers moved with a kind of grace I always admired. She sang softly while she worked, usually old sailor songs from the days when my father was out at sea. My father, a retired fisherman, was tough and stubborn, but loved her more than anything. The day he called me, his voice had cracked like a fragile shell. "Son, she is not responding. She cannot move. Please come home." I remembered dropping everything and rushing to her side, only to find her lying perfectly still, her eyes half open but vacant. Seeing her that way felt like the ground had been pulled from beneath my feet. Since then, my life had become a loop of work, worry, and sacrifice. I worked construction during the day, the kind of labor that marked my hands permanently. The guys on the crew started calling me Ghost, mostly because I kept to myself and rarely spoke. When the sun went down, I changed into the navy uniform of my night job, cleaning office buildings until my feet throbbed. I watched people leave work laughing with their families, and a hollow ache settled in my chest. I had no family waiting for me at home. Not really. My connection to my family existed through phone calls and bank transfers, nothing more. My father insisted on caring for my mother himself, even though age had taken a toll on his strength. My younger brother, Nathan, claimed he was helping too. He had once been reckless, getting himself tangled in debts that nearly tore our family apart. But after my mother's stroke, he said he had changed. I wanted to believe him. Almost every dollar I earned went to my father to support my mother's care. Medications, hospital visits, home nurses. I always imagined her lying there peacefully. I imagined Nathan reading to her, and my father sitting beside her, brushing her hair gently. These thoughts pushed me through the hardest days. They kept me moving when everything in me screamed to rest, yet guilt clung to me like a heavy coat. I felt guilty for not earning more, for not visiting often enough, for not being there on the nights she might have needed someone to hold her hand. 7 months had passed since my last visit. I still remembered kneeling beside her bed, whispering apologies she could not respond to, hoping she could still feel my love somehow. One morning, my foreman approached me with a serious expression. "Harper, take a day off. You work harder than all of us. Go breathe for a moment." His voice carried a rare softness that surprised me. The moment he said it, a rush of longing filled me. I wanted to see her. I needed to see her. I packed lightly. Just a clean shirt and a few apples from the vendor outside the station. I boarded the bus to Easton, and as the wheels rolled over long stretches of asphalt, my mind drifted to childhood memories. My mother laughing at the beach as waves chased our feet. My father cleaning his fishing nets while humming quietly. Nathan and I building sandcastles doomed to collapse with every tide. When the bus finally rolled into Easton, the smell of the sea drifted through the open windows. It felt like stepping back into a forgotten chapter of my life. But when I reached the cottage, something felt off. The smell inside was sharp, like medicine mixed with stale air. My mother lay near the window, her thin frame barely lifting the blanket. Her silver hair spread softly across the pillow. When her eyes found mine, a sadness flickered there. I knelt and took her hand gently. "I am home, Mom. I am here." My father appeared in the doorway a moment later. He looked older than I remembered. His eyes were tired, almost guarded. Nathan followed behind him, offering a small smile that never reached his eyes. Something about their expressions unsettled me, but I ignored it. I just wanted to focus on her. Trying to lighten the atmosphere, I suggested taking her outside for a little fresh air. Just a short walk near the seawall. But my father stiffened immediately. Nathan's face drained of color. They exchanged a look that vanished as quickly as it came. After a tense pause, my father agreed, though his voice carried a strain I could not place. A young nurse named Sarah arrived to help. She handed me a syringe, explaining that it had to be administered at a precise time to prevent a seizure. Then she rushed off after a phone call, leaving me alone with my mother. I pushed her wheelchair along the seawall, talking to her about my life, hoping she could hear me. The ocean glimmered beneath the bright sky, but an uneasy feeling tugged at me. That feeling expanded sharply when I stumbled on a tree root and the wheelchair tipped forward. She slipped gently onto the grass, and panic surged through me. I called for an ambulance and held her close until the paramedics arrived. At the hospital, the doctor assured me she had only minor bruises. Relief flooded me. But then he frowned as he examined her. "Her muscles are healthy. Her reflexes are normal. This is not consistent with long-term paralysis." His words struck me like a bolt of lightning. When I brought her home, I watched every movement, every blink, every breath. And when the alarm for the injection rang, I hesitated. She showed no sign of distress. No indication that she needed it. My father rushed to the room, grabbed the syringe, and administered it with practiced precision. My mother's eyes locked onto mine with a silent plea that chilled me. Something was terribly wrong, and for the first time in years, I felt the river of time pulling me toward a truth I feared to face. When morning finally came, it didn't feel like morning at all. It felt like a verdict. A reminder that no matter how deeply I wanted to hide under the covers, life would still be waiting outside, stubborn and unrelenting. My body ached in places I didn't even know existed, but my mind was the real battlefield. I dragged myself out of bed, the floor cold beneath my feet, grounding me in an unwelcome reality. I moved like a ghost toward the cracked mirror above the sink. For a long moment, I simply stared at my reflection. The bruises from the accident had darkened into ugly shades of purple, and the stitches on my forehead were a painful reminder of the night that had torn my life apart. But it wasn't the injuries that bothered me. It was the hollowness in my eyes. I had never seen myself look so defeated. "Get up," I whispered to the reflection. "Just, get up." I splashed water on my face and forced air into my lungs. I knew I couldn't spend another day drowning in despair. The accident had already taken so much from me, my mobility, my sense of safety, my income, but I refused to let it take the last shred of hope I had left. But hope needed fuel, and I had none. I stepped outside, the Dallas air was cool, sharp enough to wake me fully. I walked slowly, each step sending a dull ache up my leg where metal had once pierced flesh. The doctor had said recovery would be slow, maybe even incomplete. That thought gnawed at the edges of my mind like a hungry predator. I had been a construction foreman. My life revolved around motion, strength, precision. Now I was struggling to walk to the end of my street without gasping, but somewhere within that struggle, I felt a strange flicker of stubbornness. A refusal to surrender. I made it to the small park near my apartment. Children played on the swings, their laughter ringing through the crisp morning air. Parents chatted on benches. Joggers moved past me with effortless grace, and I simply stood there. I felt like a stranger in a world that was still moving while I had been paused. After a moment, I lowered myself onto a bench and closed my eyes. I thought back to the night of the accident, the screech of tires, the blinding headlights, the metallic crash that swallowed my world in an instant. And then the hospital, the endless beeping of machines, the cold sheets, the sterile smell, the fear. But lying beneath all those memories was a deeper truth. I was alive. That wasn't a small thing. As I sat there breathing in the morning air, something shifted inside me. It wasn't strength, not yet. But it was the idea of strength. The seed of it. I stood up again, slower this time, and began walking home. But I didn't take the short route. I took the long one. Each step was an argument with my own body. Each breath was a negotiation. And by the time I reached my apartment door, I was shaking with exhaustion, but I didn't fall. I didn't collapse like yesterday, and that small victory lit a spark in me I hadn't felt since before the accident. That afternoon, I opened my laptop, the same one that had been gathering dust, because I couldn't bring myself to work or even check emails. My inbox was a battlefield of overdue bills, medical reports, and insurance forms. But buried in the chaos was a message from an old friend, Luke, who had heard about the accident. Come by whenever you can. I know you're hurting, but you're not alone. I stared at his words until my vision blurred. For weeks, I had carried the weight of this struggle alone, because I believed I had no one. I believed asking for help made me weak. But maybe it didn't. Maybe admitting I needed someone was the first step toward healing. By evening, I found myself outside Luke's door. When he opened it, he didn't greet me with pity. He didn't look at my injuries with that awkward sympathy I hated. He just smiled and pulled me into a hug. And for the first time since the accident, I didn't feel like a broken version of myself. I felt human again. Over dinner, simple spaghetti, but it tasted like comfort. I told him everything. The pain. The fear. The nights I couldn't sleep. The moments I wished I hadn't survived. And he listened. Really listened. Without judgment, without interruption. When I finished, he leaned back and said something I will never forget. Jackson, you're allowed to suffer. But you're not allowed to quit. Those words hit me harder than the accident ever had. Something inside me cracked open, and I felt the tears spill before I could stop them. I wasn't crying from pain this time. I was crying because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That night, I went home with a journal Luke had given me. Write it down, he had said. Every thought. Every step. Every fear. Let your pain have a place so it doesn't poison the rest of you. I didn't think it would help, but it did. The next morning, before stepping out of bed, I wrote. The words came slow at first, but once they started flowing, they didn't stop. I wrote about the accident, the loneliness, the humiliation of relearning to walk, the financial worries, the anger, the shame, everything, and when I closed that journal, I felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had taken control of something. Days turned into weeks. My steps grew stronger. My pain didn't vanish, but I learned how to live around it. Physical therapy became a battlefield, but I fought through it. Not because I was brave. Not because I was strong. But because I was tired of being defined by the worst moment of my life. Slowly, painfully, I rebuilt myself. Not the old version of me. A new one. A stronger one. A truer 1.1 morning, as I walked the same path through the park, without limping this time, I realized something beautiful. The accident didn't break me. It woke me. It forced me to see who I truly was, what truly mattered, and what strength really meant. Strength wasn't lifting heavy beams at a construction site. Strength was lifting yourself out of despair. Strength was standing again, after being shattered. Strength was living, and as I felt the sun warm my face, I whispered to myself, I'm still here. And for the first time since the accident, those words felt like victory.